Hey guys, welcome back to Philip Draws Comics. I'm Philip. That's my hand you see on the screen right now, drawing the older pictures in front of you. And today we're going to be doing a tutorial. We're going to be talking about the human body, specifically the three main parts of the human body. That's the head, the torso, and the pelvis. I'm going to show you some easy tips and tricks on how to position those things against each other to make more dynamic drawings. I'm going to show you how to cheat at drawing hands, or at the very least, how to cheat on how to position hands so you can get, again, a more dynamic image. And then to finish off, we're going to talk about how to layer muscle and detail on top of this wire work framework we're going to be using throughout. So if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and start off with what has become the most useful thing for me when it comes to drawing figures, and that's what I call the three-circle method. You put down three circles for the head, the torso, and the pelvis, and then you can also extend the torso and the pelvis out, make the torso go longer down and the pelvis go wider. And you can see right there that gives you a more sort of identifiable human shape. You put the collarbone down, that's sort of a V, and off the ends of the V you have Christmas decorations dangling, that's the shoulders. Hanging down from those, we have wires that lead down to the elbows, which is about a little below the rib cage. And those go all the way down past the pelvis and end in the hands. Now, using this pill shape for the pelvis, we're going to do a particular thing. We're going to pay attention to the center line. So if you see that center line going through the head and the torso and the pelvis, that goes straight down to the ground. And the thing you always want to be aware of when you have a character standing is that generally you are leaning on one leg. Most of your weight is on one leg at a time. So when you position a character, if they're standing, you don't really want to have their leg. You want to be aware of where their legs are at, especially in like a dynamic image. You want to make sure you have like 1 foot positioned basically under the head, under the center line, to give that body more balance overall. Now, the cool thing about this three-circle method is it's really easy to see, as we're going to see in this video here, how the three circles interact with each other and at times overlap each other. So for the most extreme angle, if you were looking down at someone from space, you'd see the top of their head, their shoulders peeking out because you couldn't see the torso because the head would be in the way. And then here, this little dotted line, that would be the pelvis. So kind of think about that as you bend and stretch your characters. The circles, the three primary circles we're starting off with, are going to overlap with each other depending on the position your character is in and the angle your image is coming from. So I'll do a couple more examples here at fast speed and kind of give you an idea of how to balance everything out as you go around. At this stage, you really don't want to overcomplicate things by putting in, muscle and clothing and detail. You don't want to put in anything that you may have to erase later. So the easiest thing to do is to just focus on getting everything positioned, sort of outline, and then as you go on, you'll be able to, when you know everything's where it's supposed to be, you can start and add more detail later. Now, don't worry if you're still a little bit at loss for how to use this effectively when doing your own pictures. Later on, we're going to take some art by better artists than me, and we'll put some paper on top, and I'll show you guys exactly point by point how to copy an image. And then once you get the idea down, you'll be able to take this formula and apply it to any other images you see so you can copy. But then the next step after that will be to use this same formula to draw original images. I'm going to show you guys sort of how to do that, or at least how I do that. So there's a video I saw here on YouTube recently talking about the fact that when Disney artists and computer artists, video game artists have to do an image, they cheat. They will adjust, for example, hands to get the hands where they need them to be in relation to the face or whatever's going on. The angle of the elbows or what have you could be really, really exaggerated to make that happen. I realize you can kind of take that principle and reverse engineer it in your drawings. So if you get the head, the torso, and the pelvis built, for me, the next logical step is to then draw the arms going down to the elbows going down to the wrists, and the wrists forming into the hands. But sometimes that can be difficult to get the hands to wind up where you need them to be. After watching this video, I understood that, what you could do instead is position your hands first where you want them to be in relation to the face or the body or the other guy's body if he's throwing a punch. And then it just becomes a really simple task of playing connect the dots to draw the hand and then connect the dot to where the elbow, and then the elbow back to the shoulder. It's so simple, it feels like cheating. Now we're going to take this more complex figure. This is a Spider-Man by artist John Byrne. And we're going to break it down using this same method so I can show you how to position the body. But now we're going to worry about how to layer muscles on top of each other. And the best part is if you've gotten to where you understand the 3-circle method for the head, torso, and pelvis, it's actually the same technique for the various muscles of the arm to have them interact with each other, overlap each other depending on where the arm's positioned. And you can do this to make arms that look a lot more realistic than you'd otherwise be able to. In my video on how to draw hands, I stressed the importance of thinking about each of the fingers, each of the pieces of the fingers, each of the knuckles of the fingers as separate entities that exist on their own and interact with each other in relation to how you're viewing them. So different parts of the arms, fingers, hands, head, just the way that we talked about how the head supersedes and overlaps the torso overlaps the pelvis. Your forearm, depending on where you're going, will overlap the bicep, which will overlap the shoulder, which will overlap the torso. And so this is the simplest method I've found to make your artwork look more realistic and like it actually exists in a 3-dimensional space, so that you can kind of trick your eye into thinking it's looking at a 3-dimensional image. So we're going to take some crayons here in a second. We're going to color in each portion of the body in a different color so you can see how the green of the hand overlaps a portion of the yellow of the forearm, which overlaps a lot of the bicep. Now the shoulder in this position still sort of sits on top of the bicep, so you still see most of that. We have the yellow of the torso covering up most of the pelvis. We're going to use that same blue to cover the shoulder on the other side. Use brown to delineate the head. And have a little bit of that purple for the bicep, because if you remember that image earlier, Spider-Man's basically leaning on his left hand, bouncing off of a rooftop. And goes all the way down to the arm. Now, see how much of the pelvis is being covered up by the torso. You get just the tiniest little bit peeking out under there. But it's important that you draw it, or at the very least you be aware of it. Depending on how practiced you are, you can kind of get away with not drawing all these construction lines. But if you're like me and you're like, 2 steps away from being a beginner, it's best to do all the what do they say? The greats practice the fundamentals. It's important to practice these fundamentals every time you draw an image. Now, when it comes to positioning your figures, you've got, to my mind, 3 sources you can use. 1 is other artists. 2 is models, either live or action figure style. And the 3rd is from inside your own head. And the thing is, each one is more difficult than the last. So we're going to start with we're going to start with the most simple one. That's using other artists as a reference. So we're going to take this image of Hulk by artist Doug Mahnke, and I'm going to use it to break down for you how I would do this. Normally, I wouldn't bother tracing anything on the image, but I'm going to do it this way to kind of help you understand how the 3-circle method applies to an image like this. So we've got the head, the torso, and the pelvis. We've got our clavicle, that lead out to the Christmas tree ornaments that make the shoulders. And then those go down on the legs to the knees, and on the arms. We're going to do the hands first, like we said, and connect the dot. Again, you wouldn't really have to do this if you're tracing because it's obviously right there, but we're going to try to think it through as if we're drawing this out of our own head or we're trying to copy this image. And hopefully there you can see how the wire framework overlaps the main image. And from there, we're going to go through the steps we've already talked about, identifying where the center line is on the torso and the head and the pelvis, and then start constructing the head, the muscles, everything. Everything for me is a process. It's knowing what to do and then what to do next. I think sometimes people think formalizing a system like this for art robs the art of its artistic merit. To me, I'm of the other camp. I feel like understanding these rules and systematizing it sort of frees you up to be artistic. There's been so many times that, I've been trying to draw a face or a head or something and can't get it right because I'm just trying to copy what I see, and then I have to stop, take a step back, and kind of break it down, how to turn a fist into a cube or turn a head into a cylinder. And I'm like, okay, if I can't eyeball it, I have to go back and actually go through each individual step to make it work. And it's really it's upped my art game, and it's really helps me feel a sense of accomplishment. Now, here we're doing a thing I've learned from watching David Finch's videos. David Finch is a famous comic book artist in America, and he has a 1,000 videos on YouTube on his YouTube page showing you how to draw. So really, if you're interested, if any of this stuff looks interesting to you, you should go watch David Finch's videos after you're done with this, because he goes into way more detail on each individual thing I'm doing. Plus, he goes further, showing you how to draw hair, clothes. It's really an impossibly amazing resource, free resource here on YouTube for those of us who want to become better comic book artists. But David Finch does this amazing thing where he draws something and then erases it, leaves just like the little lines that you see there, gives you enough reference point to draw a cleaner image on top of it. A different artist might take, a light box and another piece of paper and redraw the image. If you're an artist who works primarily in digital, this is not a thing you have to worry about, because you can just keep stacking layers on top of rough sketches and redraw better and better each time. But if you're like me, you like using a single piece, you like drawing physically on physical paper with physical pen, and you like having a single image. You don't want to get out a light box and do 75 different pieces of paper as you relayer and redraw over and over again. Just invest in a really good eraser and erase all your sketches. Leave just enough detail and image so that you can use it as a guidepost to redraw the image better on each iteration. But hopefully here you can still see the concepts we were talking about earlier about each part of the body existing in a space all its own, and what sort of takes precedent over other parts of the body. So you see that left pec is the closest thing to you, so it sits on top of everything. The right pec part of it is hidden by the left pec because it's further away from you. Same with the shoulder. They're kind of in the same area, but they're sort of fighting for space. The shoulder sits on top of the bicep. The bicep connects to the forearm, and the forearm is the way it's positioned. It's closer to you. It's taking precedent over the bicep. And the reason I so highly stress these under construction lines and the thinking things through is because if you look here at earlier art by me from just a couple of years ago, you can see how flat everything is. And because everything is sort of, I think it was Hirohiko Araki, the creator of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, talked about the difference between like realism and signification when drawing an image. There's a book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, I believe, where it's they talk about that, the fact that like when you draw, your brain, it's kind of like pixels. Your brain tries to reduce things down to the simplest identification of them in your brain. So like if you try to draw, a lamp, you're not going to draw a real physical lamp in 3D out of your head. You're going to draw sort of like a flat, cartoony, silhouette of a lamp. Unless you train your brain to think about things in 3 dimensions, your brain is going to trick you into trying to draw it or at least think about it in the simplest terms, because your brain is lazy. It doesn't want to file away all this data of what a lamp looks like from 12 different directions. But the cool thing is you don't have to remember that if you just remember these simple formulas of how things interact in space. It's just one thing you have to remember, and you just have to apply it like a filter or an app to all these different situations. It helps you draw a more realistic and pleasing image. You can see this is me now trying to delineate the various planes and angles and muscles of the Hulk's face. It looks really strange now, but I promise as we go along, we'll erase these lines and tighten it up, and we'll get a Hulk that anyone could be proud to call their own. Same thing here. I'm doing these different striations to help, on the abs show off again what bit sits in front of other bits here. I'm realizing as I go along, I think Monkey did more of his Hulk was more in proportion. I think pushing against that tiny Spider-Man is what sold the size, but just standing alone, that Hulk wasn't looking beefy enough for me, so I had to sort of bulk him up a little bit. Now, I did an entire video on how to draw hands, but do a little refresher course here. This is a technique I learned, I think, specifically from a YouTuber goes by the name Drawing Comics with Pancake. She sort of broke down this style of how to draw a hand. It's to create that reverse diamond shape with your middle finger being the knuckle of your middle finger being at the highest point, and then the rest of your fingers are placed on either side. That's what pushes that middle finger out as far as it goes, and then having the little extra bit to make the thumb. But like I said, got a whole video on how to draw hands, so you can go back and check that out when you're done with this one. Here again, as each iteration of this image goes along, see me putting more and more detail in, and things that I don't know how to draw. I can, as we get down to the fist, the position of the fist is going to kind of throw me. And so I'm going to do a technique where I think about a fist works kind of like a cube. So if you can draw a cube, figure out where the side of the fist is, where the front of the fist is, and then that gives you your basis for putting all the lines down so you can finish drawing that hand and fist. Now, because foreshortening is a thing, you're not going to have the line, basically, that's, the Hulk's waist isn't going to be its own line because of the way the body's positioned. It looks like right under his shoulder connects to his butt. That's because of the extreme foreshortening. You don't get that line. You just get those things, again, like we were talking about earlier. It's these things that overlap on top of each other. Now, here's an important thing I've learned from drawing these videos here on YouTube. It's know your limits and know when to divert from the image you're trying to copy. Because I'm going to try my best here to copy Doug Mahnke's really detailed and ferocious looking Hulk face, but it's just going to wind up looking like some sort of like skinned ape skull mess. So as it goes along, I'm going to realize, yeah, this is looking less like Incredible Hulk and more like Mr. Hyde from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And the thing about the Hulk, the Hulk is a hero. So I think it was in the How to Draw Comics to Marvel way, Stan Lee stressed the notion of, even if you're drawing a monster, if he's a heroic monster, he still has to be a handsome monster. So we're going to erase all that grim, terrifying physique, and we're going to try to scale it down a little bit and make him look more handsome and heroic. And so you see me putting down the construction lines to help me delineate how this skull should be shaped, how this face should go. So at this point, I've pretty much just stopped copying Doug Mahnke's image and started just putting on my own. I did my own hair, my own face. And as this goes along, it's going to look less like a super detailed every vein and striation of the muscle version of a Doug Mahnke Hulk, and it's going to become more sort of bulky, balloony, Michelin Man style Ed McGuinness Hulk. But I think that's an important thing for you to learn. It's not, again, if you don't necessarily want to be copying another artist anyway. So if any point you can find a place to diverge from the original image, helps you create your own image. There's like a lot of artists get obsessed with the idea of style. And I heard a really good quote, the idea that style is essentially what an artist can't help but do wrong. So it's like, I'm not good at doing whatever it was Doug Mahnke was doing in this image. So like, well, what can I do? What frog DNA can I inject into this dinosaur DNA to create a better looking image? And so these are, for the most part, the steps I would be using to make my own drawings like you see here on YouTube. Now we're going to kick it up a notch and go a little, we're going to increase the difficulty. We're going to use this image of Black Widow from the Marvel Studios Visual Dictionary. It's going to be more difficult in two specific ways. One, it's not going to be another artist's work. It's going to be drawing from a photograph. And two, it's not going to be drawing a guy. It's going to be drawing a girl. And for me, at least, drawing women is a lot more difficult because, as you can see, from drawing guys, it's easier. You just put down more lines and more muscles, and then the more lines you put and the more muscles you put, the better your Hulk or Superman or Spider-Man will be. But women, when you're drawing women, it's a much more delicate act because not only do you want something that looks good and dynamic, you want something that looks, let's say, pleasing to the eye. And so there's a lot more, there's different skills you have to bring to bear to try to draw a woman in comic book style. And again, it depends on your taste and the kind of artist you want to be, how let's just call it what it is, how sexy you want the character to be, or how, whatever the opposite end of that spectrum is. And that's really up to you to determine. So we're going from this photograph. I'm going to try to stay in the lines of what's there and not make anything more bodacious than it has to be. We're not going to bother drawing not going to bother tracing the construction lines over the image. We're just going to eyeball it. This is how I would be drawing it for myself. Laying it out and erasing the bits and pieces. But you're watching me right now do something that I'm not terribly good at. So over the course of drawing this image, I will realize, areas I need to go back to school for. When we get to the point where we're drawing in her hair, it's going to be a mess. And so as soon as I finish talking with you guys, I'm going to go find a David Finch video on how to draw hair and try to up my game. But I think that's the best method for any artist. I would say just do it. Just draw, just try. Figure out what you're good at, figure out what you're bad at, and improve it. When I was a kid, I used to have I used to draw. I've drawn my entire life, and I would always have groups of kids, surrounding me in school and on the playground. And inevitably, one of them would always ask, can you teach me how to draw like you? And I had this answer that I didn't mean to be smart ass or ironic. I would just be like, yeah. I was like, draw something, try to do it good. If it's bad, draw it again and try to do it better. And that's still sort of the formula I use. The one thing I would add in there is an extra step of try to figure out why it's bad. And when I was growing up, we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have all these resources for art. art instruction. And so, like, yeah, like I'm going to do a bad job drawing her hair. And luckily there's probably a million videos I can go find on YouTube right now on how to draw hair better. And so, next time I sit down to draw something like this, the hair's going to look much better, but I'm going to realize I'm terrible at drawing boots or glove, some other aspect. And I was like, it'll be, back to the YouTube videos, figuring out how to learn how to do the thing that I'm not very good at. I'm going to have a little fun finishing up this video, and that'll be it for us. I thought about, doing more drawings, more examples of the technique, and then I stopped and thought to myself, wait a minute, I have checks notes, like 30 videos here on YouTube where that are perfect, just examples of me using this technique over and over again. And some of the videos I explain what I'm doing, and in other ones I just ramble on for days about what I'm thinking about that character or the movie that's coming out with that character in it, or the history of comic books, or the history of a particular artist, or my history with any of those things. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing me do more of this, I've got so many other videos here on YouTube. Just pick one and go with that. Just recently, the most recent video I did before this, I took a drawing by Alex Ross in the style of Bruce Timm, a very cartoony drawing of Superman versus Captain Marvel / Shazam, and converted it into a more Alan Davis-y, Ethan Van Sciver style, detailed drawing. And that's really what I think, like, you guys could do. I would recommend, if you're just starting out, find an artist you like and copy them. If you're pretty, if you're like me, if you're slightly more advanced, find images from artists and convert them into a style that you like. If you want to draw more like Bruce Timm, grab a bunch of, Alex Ross drawings or other, John Byrne, other more realistic looking artists, and convert them into Bruce Timm style. If you like Akira Toriyama, I've got videos where I take, action figures. Let's go Wolverine action figure and converted it into a drawing of Piccolo. Basically, for me, it helps to think of each individual thing you're doing as like the wire work is the frame, and then, the art that sits on top of it is like a skin, and, like in a video game, and you can trade out the skins all you want. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me for the last half hour and following along if you've gotten to this part. Comment on a previous video, someone requested I do a video like this, and here we are. I want to thank you guys for following along if you made it this far in the video and hanging out with me for the last half hour. Hopefully I was able to show you something that you can take and use in your art in the future. Be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. If there's anything I glossed over you want to know a little more about, maybe I could point you to a video that I used to learn about it. But thanks again, guys. Be sure to stick around. Let me know if you want to see more of these tutorials in the future. Thanks, guys. Bye.